2, 1. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming and being a part of my podcast, because I know you run a few podcasts on your own.
I do. Mostly true crime.
Okay.
Well,
Is true crime a real passion for you?
It is. I mean, it always has been. When I was in high school, I used to write to death row inmates until my mom found out. So it's been a thing since I was young.
Death row inmates. Okay. And any reason for that?
You know, I was watching, I think it was like Sally Jesse Raphael when I was little, because I'm older. And she was talking about, you could write to death row inmates, like they need friends. So, and the address popped up. So I was like, oh, it sounds good. I need friends too. And it was really kind of interesting until I got a few letters. And my mom was like, where are these letters coming from? And I told her, and she's like, you can't give out our address to prisoners.
That's a bad one. And was it because you were interested in their crimes and interested in what they had done, or the fact that they were kind of like, about to die or about to die in the future? What was the real attraction?
I think it just was so mysterious to me, like their lives, like living in prison, and what was that all about? What did they do? Why were they there? What was their childhood like?
Yeah, I mean, they should be on podcasts. Apart from the, I've apparently there's been a few overturned cases recently of like people who are now redeemed and claimed as being innocent, and it's crazy.
Well, it depends, on what year they went in and what forensics things have changed since then, because a lot of times things do change and maybe they really were innocent, or that just can't be proven.
That's also true. Not beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So you run a true crimes podcast, and then what's your second podcast that you also have?
Well, they're both true crime based. My first one is called Strictly Stalking, and we interview victims of stalkers. And then my second one is called The Last Trip, and I started that one because I travel a lot and I travel by myself, and I decided, you always look up places when you travel, like what am I going to do when I get there, and what's happening there. I started looking up like missing and murdered people that had been there, like other people that were on the same vacations. And I just found it fascinating. So I'd kind of go to the places where they were last seen or whatever, which, a little morbid. But I was like, well, if I'm interested in this, maybe somebody else is too. So the podcast is about people who were murdered or went missing on vacation.
Oh my God. And are you just hosting these on your own, like talking to the audience and explaining like, what the case is and what the evidence is and what's happened or is there anyone with you debating?
Yeah, no, it's just me for most of them. Sometimes I'll bring in somebody that lives in that area to tell more about the place. And I kind of do it like it's like a half travel podcast, half true crime. So I do talk about the case and go through all of that. And I talk about the place, anything that's cool to do there other than, the true crime aspect of it. And then, tips on how to stay safe in that specific location.
And are these like US based, or are you talking global? Like what? That's wild. And yeah, you're right. A little bit morbid. It's interesting that this has like caught your attention enough to want to share it with the world.
It is interesting. I at first was like, well, maybe nobody would be interested in it, but I feel like I can't be the only one. Luckily, it seems like I'm not. And a lot of people do find it, interesting. I think true crime has kind of taken hold of a lot of fascinating parts of people's lives. It's something that most people don't participate in. So it's different. It's unusual. It's mysterious.
I am coming at this as a complete novice, and I'm completely ignorant of this whole true crime space. It's never been an interest of mine, but I thought like if I need to figure out what's really going on, I should probably talk to you.
Yeah. I've got the lowdown.
And I mean, when did you get into podcasting? Like how long, what has this journey of yours been like?
It was kind of random. I love listening to podcasts. I've listened to them, since they came out, Serial, all the true crime ones anyway. So I was listening to them, and I have a business partner for my first one, for Strictly Stalking. And, I called him up one day. I was like, I want to do a podcast so bad, but everyone is already doing all the murders. Like, there's just not enough murders to go around at this point. Like, every murder out there has been on a podcast.
And this was a problem for you.
I didn't want to do the same thing everybody else was doing. So he was like, well, no one's doing a podcast about stalking. And I was like, well, I don't even know anything about stalking. Like, that's weird, right? There's a whole crime out there I don't know much about. So I started researching it, and I was like, wow, like, this is a very serious crime. Like, so many people get stalked, and it's not, the awareness of it isn't really out there like it should or could be. For some reason, a lot of stalking victims feel very ashamed, like they brought it on themselves, which is not the case ever. And so, I started doing the research. I was like, this is fascinating. Let's jump in. So we launched our first episode in January of 2020. I think, with COVID and the pandemic, it did really well, and I wasn't working as much, so I was able to put a lot more time into it and kind of took off.
That's an amazing story. Like launching a podcast right in January 2020 as the world was about to end.
You had no idea in January, right? It was going to happen just months later. So
that's amazing. Very, very good timing on that. So, I mean, were you born here in Los Angeles? How did you come to arrive in Southern California? I'm from Canada, in case you didn't know. So I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada. And I've lived abroad for like almost 25 years, China mostly and Dubai, and now I'm coming back to North America.
Nice. I was born in the Midwest, grew up in Iowa and Wisconsin. We moved around a little bit. How did I get to LA? That is a good question. I followed a guy.
Were you stalking him?
No. I had a boyfriend that was in a band, and he was going to be, big musician. And I was going to manage his band. I have a master's in music management. So we moved out to LA, and his music career didn't exactly take off. I decided I hated managing bands, and, I stayed.
Managing a band with multiple members must be like herding kittens, like just impossible.
It's babysitting grown men that don't know what they're doing.
I can see that. Yeah. I think I'm always amazed not by the quality of the music of a band that stayed together for 20 years, but just the fact that 4 or 5 people, mainly men, can actually like hang out together and be friends for 20 straight years with all the internal conflicts and the envy and greed and everything else that takes over.
Oh yeah, the drugs, the women, the drinking. There's a lot that goes on, and it's not for me. I'm like, I cannot babysit grown-ups.
So where were you in your childhood where you thought like getting a degree in music management would be something that you really wanted? Like, were your parents musicians? Did you like music or
No, as a kid, I just had no direction really. I mean, I love music. I've always loved music. Like, I was really sheltered as a kid. I really thought I listened to a lot of Grateful Dead. I followed Fish for like 2 years. When I was listening to Grateful Dead, I thought all the songs were, for me and Jerry Garcia were going to meet and like, I don't know, I guess fall in love. Like, he's really old. I didn't think about it at the time. I was young. But then he died. So I went on Fish tour. But no, I was just kind of directionless as a kid. I wanted to do everything, like every little thing. And I think I have done pretty much everything at this point. So I didn't have much direction. I got my bachelor's degree in photography mostly because it was easy. I was like, oh, well, this is going to be easy. My parents wanted me to go to college, so I figured that was the easiest thing I could do. And I graduated. And then the master's in music management was because I met a guy and he was a musician. So I was like, well, let me help you with your career. Like, that sounds great. And that's kind of how that came about.
Wow. You did a master's for a man.
I did.
Not many men can say that.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, he's a chiropractor now. We're still great friends, but he's married.
Safer job.
With someone else. Yeah. He still plays music, but mainly a chiropractor in Vegas.
Oh, that's nice. Vegas is good. It's funny kind of being in West Hollywood because you're like the Troubadour is just a block away.
It's just there.
Yeah, Whiskey's up at the street in the Viper Room. Like, there are all these legendary spots where bands were coming through in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's
all of them. Doors, everybody.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of musical history in LA, which is quite nice when you're just walking around, especially up on Sunset.
So much.
So you come to LA for a man
Mhm.
and a band. When you dumped the man, did you decide to pick up another band?
No, which I started doing real estate after that. I did real estate for a while and it was really good. It was like that time when anyone could get a house, literally, because I bought one. Um, and I remember when I bought my house, like I had just started real estate. I wasn't making any money at all. And I had no money. They're like, it's okay, just write these numbers down. Like, you can have a house. So I literally bought a house in Laurel Canyon.
Oh, that's amazing. So like bank loans were easy to get. Everything was.
They're just handing them out. So that also meant, though, that I was selling houses because they were handing them out to anybody. They weren't checking. And I think, and then, the downfall of the housing market came right after that. So I stopped doing real estate because I couldn't sell houses anymore. And
So this was just prior to 2008, or was this another turn down?
no, it was before 2008.
Yeah.
And then I started, I knew a guy who had been like a child actor.
They're around.
So like, and so he wanted to become a director and have a production company. And like, I'd never been on a set or anything like that, but he was like, you can run it. I was like, great, I'll run a production company. And I think, I think one of my greatest strengths is that I can just learn anything because I grew up without the internet. And so now that we have the internet, I'm like, oh, wow, like you can learn anything.
That's the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, cool, I'll just learn how to run a production company. And I did. And I did, we did pretty well. And I did that for a few years. And then from there, because I was pretty much doing all the jobs.
Yeah, that's not easy. Yeah.
And when that stopped, I decided that I love doing the casting because like everyone's really nice to the casting director. It's like the best job.
Why is that?
Because we give jobs. Like we hire, we pick who, I mean, the producers really do the picking, but like we're like your first door into being an actor. So everyone's like super nice. Like if I call, everyone's like, hi, it's so nice to hear from you. And I just loved that.
Having that power?
Just people being nice.
Because of the power.
Well, yeah.
Casting directors are no pushovers. I mean, you guys put the faces in front of the directors and the producers that they will eventually pick from. I mean, that's a lot of power. Like you're making and breaking careers.
I mean, I don't want to look at it like that, but yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I mean,
star makers.
So then I did that for a long time. I did reality, I did scripted and unscripted. I did everything. Commercials, music videos. I've done all.
Anything stand out as being particularly exciting or something you're particularly proud of on that? Any name drops you want to throw? This is LA, for Christ's sake.
Really? I cast a really cool series called Paradise City. It's on Peacock, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm not wrong. It was really good. It's got like Bella Thorne and it's got a bunch of musicians. It's really good.
Okay.
That one was fun.
Paradise City. Have to check it out on Peacock. But music videos sound really fun too, right? Because a lot of movie directors and television directors get their start in music videos. So that can be pretty interesting.
True.
Yeah.
They are. I mean, I don't get to like. I'm just doing like the casting part, so I'm not really meeting the musicians or anything like that. But I'm like the beforehand. Lately, I've been doing a bunch of Spanish ones, like Spanish music, which is kind of fun. I mean, nothing I've ever heard of, but
now when you do a Spanish music video or Spanish television show, are you casting in LA for productions in Mexico, or are they bringing their productions here?
they're bringing them here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's surprising because I thought like LA was really expensive to shoot and not really worth it all the time. That's why everything's kind of moving away.
I would probably have to agree with you, except that I am based here, so hopefully it doesn't all move away. Although, I do cast anywhere, but the ones I've been doing lately have been shooting here. It's been interesting because, people have this idea of what Hollywood is like. So they come here and they're like, oh, well, like, we have $1,000 for the lead. Maybe we can get, and then they name like actors that people have heard of. And I'm like, well, no, you can't.
For $1,000.
Yeah. So it's a lot of like managing expectations.
That's tough when someone comes to Hollywood and thinks they can get like
Just anyone. for $1,000. I mean, you can, but you know, you're not going to get like a recognizable person. And it's interesting trying to manage those expectations. That's kind of like part of what I enjoy sometimes is like, you know, you have to explain to them these people, while they may listen to your music and they may love your music, if you don't know the actor personally, like there's no way their agents or managers will ever let them do your music
For $1,000. Oh, that's true. Yeah, they just don't want to be in anything. Oh, who's the guy who you remember that music video with Christopher Walken way back when with Fatboy Slim?
See?
Yeah. It was great, wasn't it? I caught that on YouTube just this last weekend because you know what? I was looking for who's the other actor in Hollywood that loves dancing in all his movies, and he did another music video where he was dancing, and it's kind of like a take on Christopher Walken. No, Patrick Swayze's passed on. Yeah. Sam Rockwell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he was just in that movie with Argyle, like with Henry Cavill and all that. And then I don't know, I was flipping around, and Sunday afternoon it was raining out, and yeah, I caught this Sam Rockwell, and he does an entire music video by this Australian band that apparently he had liked, and it's just him dancing in a cafeteria, like an old, like New York style cafeteria cafe, and it was lovely.
I mean, it's not unheard of,
No.
you know.
I think you got to have some skills that you want to show off.
Right, or it has to be like a certain, like they're your friends or like it's your favorite band. I mean, John Cusack, you know, he has worn a Fishbone shirt in like half of his movies.
I have never picked that up.
Well, he loves Fishbone, and he's a cool dude. He's a really super cool dude, and you know, it's little things like that that do happen because people are people, actors are too. But it's not going to happen to hire a casting director and be like, oh, I want these famous people in my music video, like. So it's a lot of managing expectations. Same with film.
Tough.
You know, same thing happens with film, like especially new filmmakers, and it, like I like to talk to them and do that because I feel like I can do it in a way that it doesn't like squash their dreams of having, you know, amazing people in their film, because there's so many amazing actors, you know.
That's
and you don't need like this big name actor to be in your student film or, you know, whatever. And so I like to be able to be the one to be like, okay, well, you have like this amazing thing that you've written and that's great, but you have to wait a while until you can have like bigger actors, you know. But I try and say it like the nicest way to like, because I really want to keep their dreams alive, you know.
I think that's really sweet because I mean, because when you are directing a film or producing a film, that is your baby, right? And you think like everyone needs to love what you're doing, and Jake Gyllenhaal, if he just can read the script, he's gonna come and work like for free.
I've heard that so many times, but I love that. Like I love that feeling. You know, I love that feeling that they have, that energy that they have when they're like, no, this is the best script ever. Like, if we could just get this person to read it, they would do it. And while that could be the case, it's just not going to happen. There's too many people standing in the way. There's agents and managers. And
Rightly so. They're there to protect the gatekeepers. You know?
it does happen sometimes, you know, once in a while. Like, if you have a friend of a friend who can get it to, you know, it's happened before, but it's just not something that happens very often.
So it sounds like, I mean, after coming out to LA with your then boyfriend to manage their band, like when it didn't work out, you didn't think about maybe going home?
No, like I really came from the Midwest.
Yeah, so there was no going back?
No, it's so cold there.
I know it's cold. Yeah, it's cold in Canada too. Yeah.
I can't do it. In fact, LA is getting too cold for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cold this winter, right? With all the rain, everyone said it was unseasonably cold.
Yeah, I really, no. I've been thinking more and more about somewhere in like South America, Central America.
Mhm. Yeah, it's amazing, and there's way lower taxes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, and just the happiness level of like people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, LA can be a happy and a miserable place depending on which side of the fence you're sitting on.
To be in LA is a lot of work. So it's it's that added stress. And when you're living in a tropical country on an island or something, there's just.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can believe that. If you're lucky enough to walk away from all the work. Yeah. I guess you can run your podcasts from anywhere, can't you? Yeah.
Exactly. And I still do casting, but yeah, I mean, my main focus is more like things I can do remotely.
Okay. That's always helpful. Yeah, if you can be a remote worker, you can take your studio anywhere, right? Yeah. Very nice. Are your two podcasts, are they audio only or do they also have video?
No, they're audio only. For Strictly Stalking, a lot of our guests come on anonymously because they are still being stalked, or, their stalker, if your stalker is not in prison or dead, there's a really good chance they're still stalking you and you don't know. They're still stalking you and you do know, or they'll be back to stalk you again soon.
That's terrifying. I mean, would you consider yourself kind of like a stalking expert, given the fact that you heard so many of these stories now?
I mean, I've done over 200 episodes. I don't think, I don't know if expert is a good word, because I feel like I've learned with our listeners as we went. 'Cause I didn't know anything about stalking when I first started doing the podcast, which um, I think helped because I feel like I asked questions that other people would ask. If you don't know, like, these are the questions that you'd want to know.
I think that's sorry to interrupt. I think that's really smart because I think your listeners might not actually know, and then you're just part of the audience, right? I think that's a great. No one wants to be talked down to in a podcast, right? Everyone wants you to ask the same questions they were going to ask. No one wants you to have a PhD and be asking all this high level stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with that, and I think that helped us along the way. And I've definitely heard a lot of stories. I know a lot of how to try to navigate being stalked, but there's no way to like avoid it, I guess.
I mean, how terrifying. I mean, we can go into stalking a little bit if you like. I mean, how terrifying is it now on social media where like people are posting where they are in real time? I mean, I think you're like, if someone wants to know where you are, it becomes easier and easier, doesn't it? It's kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean, even I do it. Like, sometimes I won't catch myself and I'll be like, oh, I'm going here tonight. And I like tag my location. I'm like, can it get any easier for people? Um, but I try not to live my life in fear. I mean, I study crime all day long. Like, I research crime all day long. So I try my best not to live in fear in any way. Um, and I think, people just need to do what's comfortable for them in that respect. But yeah, it's extremely easy to find out everything about somebody online.
That's crazy. I remember, it wasn't necessary. It was a version of stalking, I guess, but it was to commit a robbery. And I remember, I don't know if you ever saw that Bling Ring movie where these actors would be like, "Hey, I just got cast, for this movie. I'm going to be in Italy for 6 weeks," and then people would be like, "Oh, they're in Italy for 6 weeks. Let's go rob their home." Like,
Yeah. And you don't think about it. Well, and there's a lot of people that need to do that on social media. That's their livelihood. Like, hey, I'm going to be here for a meet and greet. That's dangerous. I mean, people, Christina Grimmie, her name is, her stalker shot her at a meet and greet.
are you serious?
Yeah, she didn't even know she had a stalker. That's how, I mean, he was just stalking her like alone in his little room, and then went to her meet and greet and shot her.
Oh my God, that's terrible. Was that in LA?
That was in Florida. It was right before the Pulse nightclub shooting.
I'm not familiar with that.
There's like a big shooting in Florida, mass shooting at a LGBTQ plus nightclub.
And how many years ago was that?
2004, I think.
Oh, crap.
Maybe sooner. Actually, no, 2011. The years go by.
The years are drifting. Yeah.
I get. I'm like, I don't remember. I always think like 19 something, and it's like, oh wait, that was like more than 20 years ago now.
It gets harder. I left Canada in 2001 and moved to China, and then after that I was there for 18 years. Then I was in Dubai, and then I just came back here in like November.
Nice. What part of China were you in?
Shanghai, China.
Have you been to Tiger Leaping Gorge?
Yes, I've been to Tiger Leaping Gorge in Yunnan province.
I did a podcast about Tiger Leaping Gorge. There was
Beautiful.
a kid, David Snedden, and he was hiking there and he disappeared. And North Korea kidnapped him.
North Korea. So that's interesting because Tiger Leaping Gorge is kind of southwest China near the border of Myanmar, and North Korea is closer to the northeast of China. And that's a long way to go to kidnap someone.
It is. But North Korea's actually been kidnapping people all over the world for years.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
They admitted to it in 2000. I don't know why 2011 keeps coming in my head. They admitted to it a few years ago, and they gave back a bunch of people.
Oh, that's nice of them.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly Japanese people. But that's how they found out that this kid, David Snedden, was there. Because when the people came back, they were like, hey, there's this American kid. He's from Utah. They're like, there's this American kid who speaks Chinese and Korean. And they kidnapped him, I think it was 2001 or 4. And he's still there. But his family had no idea. They thought that he died, like he fell in the gorge and died and drowned, because that's what China told him.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing stories about foreigners from time to time dying, drowning in Yunnan province around the Three Gorges Dam, because the trekking around there is not always the safest.
It does happen, but they've always found everybody.
And now they didn't find this body because he was in Pyongyang. That's fucked up. And you did a podcast about that.
I did. It was fascinating and sad because I think he's still alive in North Korea.
Oh my God, still like 20 plus years later.
Yeah, well, so what North Korea does when they kidnap people, they actually give them like a wife or a husband, and they have kids, and that way it's like a reason, it helps so that they don't try to.
I thought they would ransom them.
No, a lot of times I don't want to say they treat them well, but it depends on why they kidnap you and what you're doing. 'Cause he's been teaching English there.
Oh my God, they had to kidnap their own English teachers?
They always have.
That's insane. Oh my God. And this is the kind of stuff that you're focusing on your true crime podcast.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to bring awareness to things like that. A lot of people, there's a lot of people that have gone missing. Somebody knows. Somebody always knows something. You don't just vanish off the.
Someone knows something somewhere. And now with digital technology, phones, and all this kind of stuff, the fact that someone can go missing is just impossible.
It's possible. People are doing it every day.
Well, do you still remember the Malaysian Airlines flight that went missing? Yeah. They have a Netflix documentary all about that, and they still can't figure it out. Yeah.
It's probably in the water.
Probably. But how many mobile phones were on that plane that are still connected to a satellite somewhere?
Yeah. I mean, anything can happen. I'm more of like I have to see it to believe it type of person. But yeah, I mean, people go missing, people get murdered, and somebody has always seen something. And it's really, really difficult, like for families of people who've gone missing or gotten murdered on vacation, because it's another country, another language, another government. It's hard to get any type of justice or even to find out what happened.
Yeah. I know a lot of them have to like hire private investigators to do the heavy lifting, because the government people don't want the PR, the bad PR, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's difficult. And even then, some private investigators can't go to other country. Like it depends on what country that you've gone missing or gotten murdered in. And there's a lot of tape.
That's not easy. So the stalking podcast you set up because your business partner in that thought it would be an interesting topic, something that wasn't being covered, and you didn't know really anything about it, but you thought it was a topic that people should be talking about and should be explored, and you took that on.
Yeah.
Well, that's no small task. How many episodes of the Stalking podcast have you done?
I think tomorrow is 222.
Oh wow, no joke! Congratulations on breaking 200. That's exciting.
Yeah, we've never taken a week off. It's a lot of work.
I bet, because you have to. I mean, so each episode you're interviewing someone who's been stalked. So those are 222 different stories, like lives that have been impacted by this kind of behavior.
Exactly.
And are all of them women?
No.
What percentage is women versus men?
It is definitely a higher percentage of women, but I think part of that is because men aren't believed as much, especially if they're being stalked by a woman.
Like, oh, why are you coming to the police to tell us this woman's stalking you? She's just going to be your next girlfriend. Just take her out on a date. Something silly or chauvinistic like that.
Yeah, or they'll say, oh, well, what'd you do to her to make her stalk you? Like it's some, cool thing or something. They don't take it as seriously.
Unwelcomed attention is not sexy. No. We can get that out of the way right now. It's not a laughing matter, obviously, but it's insane that people can just like take someone's fear, because being stalked is a scary thing, and then just turn it into some kind of like joke and say, that'd be fine.
And we have stories from, all across the board. Like there's people that have been stalked by their parents, a sibling, any other kind of family member, boyfriends, girlfriends, teachers, strangers, just anybody.
And are you dealing with mostly like modern day stalking stories, like things that have happened in the last 10 years, or are you going deeper?
All across the board on that too. We've had, older women that were stalked in the 70s and 80s, which is fascinating because, they didn't have cell phones and trackers and social media. Like they were physically stalked.
Mm. That is, because that's, I mean, one would assume it's a lot more like, like close quarters effort.
Yeah, like standing outside your house or inside.
Yeah, that's not good at all.
Which that still happens too today.
Oh, wow. That is, yeah, that's terrifying. And may I ask where you find these victims?
Well, now they kind of come to us, which is great. In the beginning, I'm really good at finding people, which is why I did casting for so long, especially reality casting. So in the beginning, I would look through newspaper articles and see, sometimes they name the victim or survivors, and sometimes they don't. So if they did, and they named the survivor, I would start searching for them. And it's hard to search for a stalking victim because they don't want to be found.
I bet. And then do you approach them as like, hey, I run this podcast, would you like to share your story anonymously maybe so that people can learn from what happened to you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's really educational.
It is. And, most people feel better after they talk about it because, I mentioned earlier, being stalked, it has so much shame involved with it, which is unusual to me because I haven't been stalked. So, I feel it's terrible that there should be any kind of shame involved, but people feel like it's, their fault, like they led somebody on or whatever. And it's not the case, but they're kind of made to feel like that, a lot of times from authorities or whatever reason. And so once they start talking and speaking out about it, they feel a lot better. It's a lot like domestic violence, and domestic violence and stalking often go hand in hand.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. Speaking about it to anonymously, I guess could be very therapeutic, especially if you're like holding it all in and feeling some level of like shame about the whole experience.
A lot of times people haven't even told like their family members or like their friends because, it's drama, it's this, it's that. And number one thing you should do is to tell everybody around you so they can help you and keep an eye out.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a no-brainer, right? Like the more people around you who know that something is going badly, the more people you have watching your back, like looking out for you.
But people that haven't been stalked, it's something where, and it gets thrown around, and it's in movies, and it's like, you go to tell your friend like, I'm being stalked by my ex, and they'll say something like, oh, just ignore it.
That's
that
not
doesn't work.
Yeah.
It does not work. Sometimes, sure, and if it does, that's great. But most of the time, it doesn't work.
So, I mean, based on your experience of listening to 225 of these courageous people who have come forward to share their terrible experiences, I mean, what are some of the things you can do if you think you're being stalked? Like, in the experiences that you've listened to?
Definitely document everything. Write it down, pen and paper style. Make several copies because stalkers break into your house too. Write everything down, every little thing that happens throughout the day. Write it down and then go to the authorities. It's better to go to the authorities and, maybe it's not time yet. Maybe authorities aren't going to do anything, but get as much as you can documented, even going to the authorities. Well, I need to make a report. If you go to a police station and they don't want to make a report, talk to the next police officer, talk to the next one, to talk to them until one of them will make a report because it's your life. I mean, stalking is just murder in slow motion many times.
That seems crazy that like a police officer or representative of the law wouldn't take your claim of being afraid of another person seriously.
Well, police officers are not trained in stalking as well as I think that they should be. Like stalking, domestic violence, most crimes against women are lumped into one small training session for police officers, unfortunately. And stalking is very hard to understand, I think, because when you call the police, it's because a crime happened, right? Like someone got stabbed, so you call the police. But if you call the police because flowers were left on your door, how are they going to react?
Right. Yeah, it's like a preemptive crime almost.
Right.
And they don't know how to deal with it.
Exactly. And so that's why if you have everything documented, you say, my ex that, I have a restraining order against left flowers on my door. I know it's him because I have a camera. Like you have to, unfortunately, like be the biggest advocate for yourself in a stalking situation. You have to know how to tell your story to each and every police officer because they also don't share your story. So if you have a new officer, you tell the story again and again and again.
It's tough though, like, having to like relive that again and again and again. Yeah. And not having people take you seriously the first time. It must be hard not to have your feelings validated by a member of the law enforcement authority, right?
It's very, very difficult. And I think that there have been a lot of strides to, get better training and for police officers and, people in authority roles. So I think it is and hopefully will be getting better. But it's a lot of crimes against women, I think, authorities aren't trained well enough.
No, well, that's a fact. Yeah, for sure. Are there any statistics that you might be able to throw my way about anything? No, I don't want to put you on the spot.
First person.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but
What kind of statistics do you?
well, no, just I mean, like, how many stalking victims are there in Los Angeles or California?
I don't know about states, but like in the U.S., it's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men have had some form of stalking.
That's high.
Very.
Yeah, like 33% of all women have felt like they're being stalked, like unwanted attention. Yeah. I mean, does any of this come through the workplace?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like the workplace is super dangerous.
That's why I work at home.
That's why I invited you to my home for a podcast. No, it can be terrifying, right?
Anything can be dangerous, though. That's why it's like going on vacation. Do you think that that's going to be dangerous? It is for a lot of people. A lot of people don't come back. Dating is probably the most dangerous thing out there, right?
Absolutely, especially now, yeah.
Dangerous.
Getting in an Uber.
Swimming with sharks?
Yeah. It's
I'd rather swim with sharks.
You'd rather
It's the least dangerous of all the things I mentioned.
swimming with sharks, not in a cage?
I would probably do it. Well, it depends what kind of shark.
Okay, wow, yeah. Stalking is pretty terrifying. I was chatting with someone the other day and we were just talking about suicide rates, and obviously that's a very dark topic, but she was saying 1 person every 11 minutes in the United States dies of suicide, and it's 80% men and 20% women. So I didn't know that men were actually higher on the scale of suicides. Yeah.
I think it's because men don't talk about their feel. Like if men have any problems with mental health, they don't talk about it. It's not, it's not okay for men to have mental health problems as much as it is, I guess, for women, society.
I think that's true, and I think that and you look at maybe the last 20 years, I feel like the stigma against mental health has really disappeared a lot, and people are actually now, a lot of celebrities too, a lot of people are using social media to come out and say, hey, I am not okay, right? I think that really helps people say like, well, I'm not okay either, and wow, this famous person feels the same way I feel, and that can be quite comforting. But I'm curious, like, does anyone ever come out and say like they're being stalked? Because I feel like there's a fair amount of shame that's being kind of taken away from the mental health topic. But are you seeing any kind of like dissipation of shame around the stalking issue?
Well, it's interesting because so many celebrities are stalked, right? We see it on TMZ all the time. Like, Taylor Swift her stalker jumped the fence again, or whatever it might be. And they're famous, so that's just part of the game.
They get the attention and they get the unwanted attention.
But when you're say you dated somebody, broke up, and now they're stalking you, it's more of a, you're going to blame yourself for that. You chose that person to date. So I think that's where like this shame comes in, and it just shouldn't be. Like, you don't know when you're dating somebody that, they're going to start stalking you later. It's the same as domestic violence. You don't know that this guy who was amazing for the first 3 months is going to hit you 3 months in.
Right.
So
Yeah. Doesn't come on the first date, does it?
never did.
And yeah, that is horrifying. And it's a real problem, isn't it? Especially in the big cities.
Everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. We talk to people in all the countries. I mean, we've talked to people all over the world that have had stalkers.
Yeah, that's a terrifying topic, actually, when you really like stop and think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you could be in line at the bank and somebody behind you just decides that they're obsessed with you and they follow you, and you might not even know you're being followed at first or for a long time, or like you might not know until they decide to attack you.
Okay, so let's say for example, you didn't give someone your address and they're showing up at your house delivering flowers, declaring their love for you, and you're getting this on camera, and you go to the police and you're a woman and you say, this person is coming to my home uninvited, done this multiple times, also messaging me on social media, blah, 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 blah. Like, what would be the step that you would want to have them take on your behalf?
A restraining order.
Okay.
Definitely. You want a restraining order first. A restraining order is just a piece of paper. It doesn't really do much. Once in a while, it'll scare somebody enough to stop. And that's like ideal.
And what is a restraining order exactly?
You have to stay away from somebody for however many feet for however long. Unfortunately, they don't usually give very long restraining orders. So like it might be 6 months or 1 year. If you can get it for longer, that's great. But the best thing that can happen with a restraining order is that they stop. If they don't stop, then they violated the restraining order. And unfortunately, a lot of times they have to violate it several times in order to get in actual trouble, in order to go to court, in order to go to jail. But I mean, those are the only steps.
Wow. So violating a restraining order is a crime that is punishable by a fine or jail. But bothering someone to the point where they need a restraining order is not a crime. It just triggers the restraining order being issued.
Pretty much. I mean, unless they've broken in and stolen something and you can prove that, or they've vandalized something, or they've attacked you physically.
So do you have a producer that helps you with the Stalking podcast, who helps you like manage all these people who are writing into you saying like, I have a story, and are you vetting it all? Are you doing it all by yourself? Wow. It's a big job, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I don't think people realize, I mean, you probably do, but having a podcast it's a full-time job.
It really is, yeah. I spend more time communicating with podcast guests and convincing potential podcast guests that I'm not crazy and this will actually be fun. I spend more time doing that than actually doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, before I came here, I looked you up. I looked to see if you've been arrested. I looked to see, I mean, I look, that's what I do before I meet up with anybody that I don't know. Probably because I am into the true crime thing.
Right.
I gave my girlfriend your address. Like, this is where I am. I'll be here at 4:00. She has my location on my phone. She always does. So there's, have to take some precautions.
Of course. Absolutely. No, it's always good. And I mean, what is it like kind of carrying this baby of this podcast on your own shoulders? I mean, that must be stressful. Like you're 200 plus episodes in, like you're managing it all by yourself. Like it's quite hard to monetize a podcast. I mean, that's why we do so much of it on our own, but still we go to air twice a week or 3 times a week or whatever it is, because people like it and people like listening to us and people like our guests, or people like to learn what we have to share. I mean, but it really is like a heavy load to carry.
It is. For me, I think it really helped me a lot, hearing all the stories. And I didn't realize it would, because right before I started the podcast, I was in an abusive relationship. And I got out of that, luckily, right before COVID, right when the podcast launched, actually. And so then I started hearing everybody's stories, and domestic violence and stalking go hand in hand. So I would hear these stories, and afterwards I would just feel horrible, because I was hearing my story over and over, and I didn't put it together like I could have. But in the end, once I started realizing what was going on in my head a little bit, it's really started helping me because then I was like, oh, I am not alone. Like these people are telling me my same story. Like, oh, this guy said this and did this. Me too. Same words, Crazy how that kind of.
When you say domestic violence and stalking goes hand to hand, I don't necessarily get that, because I feel like domestic violence is something that happens between you and someone you like willingly let into your life or willingly let into your home, and where there's intimacy between the two of you in some way, shape, or form. And then that violence happens kind of in the home or within the confines of like a relationship. I'm not a criminal expert at all, but that's my understanding. And then stalking would be someone who you don't want in your life, who's pushing themselves into your life unwantingly. So tell me how those go hand in hand.
So it's usually, you have a violent relationship and then you leave that person and they start stalking you. So a lot of times the violence in a relationship is just a precursor to them stalking you when you finally leave. That's why leaving an abusive relationship is so dangerous. There's so many reasons why it's dangerous. But a lot of times, when a woman does or man tries to leave an abusive relationship, that's when, they get hurt.
That's when the stalking begins.
Or they get attacked worse.
It's, that is, the human relationships are terrifying in general. Like it's not a funny, it's really scary, like who we let into our lives and then how they can either be great partners for life or you make our lives completely miserable.
And in a lot of the relationships that have domestic violence, they're also being stalked in the relationship, during the relationship. Like if your significant other starts telling you that you have to share your location or they have to look through your phone, or, you go out to dinner with your girlfriends and they show up, like that's not okay. That's something that needs to be talked about. Like that's not okay. And that can just get worse as things go on.
And that's kind of like a initial stalking behavior kind of creeping up in the relationship as we're in a situation where you like might laugh it off or might think like, maybe that's okay, but actually those are red flags.
Yeah
Definitely. Oh my God, it's so complicated. Yeah. And I mean, and I guess like being stalked like that, being intimidated like that, I mean, it must turn these victims off of having other relationships in the future. Like it must just be incredibly isolating.
I think it depends person to person. I mean, I haven't wanted to date since I left my last relationship. Recently I have, I guess, but I'm not acting on it. I've thought about it.
But it definitely took you a few years.
Yeah. I mean, it's been over 4 years. I'm just like, it wasn't interesting to me to date anyone and to try and go through anything like that again. And I think that happens to a lot of people where, you just close up and you have to like have like a rebirth, like, okay, who am I going to be? Because it takes so much of who you are. When you're being stalked, it's a 24-hour thing to stay safe because your stalker has a lot of time to stalk you somehow. I still haven't figured that out. But they know your every move, So it's 24 hours a day. You're living in this fear. It's like this, it's exhausting.
And I think that fear and that anxiety could also lead to substance abuse as well, probably, or
I mean, sure, it can. Anything like that can.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Well, I mean, it's sad that you have to keep up the good work, but I hope you keep up the good work and keep sharing these horrific stories and educating people about it, because I think like it's pretty important that these stories get out, and it seems to be something that people are finding helpful.
I think so. We've had a lot of people, reach out to us and thank us, which is crazy. Like, don't thank me. It feels weird, but they don't know. Like, I would not have known what to do if I had a stalker before the podcast. Like, how do you call the cops and be like, oh, someone left flowers on my car? Like, that sounds weird. Like, who do you even tell? How do you explain it? And like said, what steps, like what can I do if I'm being stalked? Like I wouldn't have known any of that. And when people go online and they're like, I'm being stalked, what do I do? Our podcast comes up, which is great. And that's usually how people find us. And so most of our listeners have been or are being stalked.
and have been able to find your podcasts when they're looking for solutions or answers on what to do.
Yeah, because there's very few resources out there. I mean, it's becoming better and better. There are, more advocates out there and there's more people working to create awareness, but it's hard.
Would you ever consider yourself in a position of authority where you might actually want to like write a book on steps you could take if you think you're being stalked or you are being stalked? Or because I feel like after 222 episodes of talking to 222 victims, you're probably in a position of authority on this topic.
It's interesting. I've wondered that myself, but each case is so different. Um, just because anybody can stalk anybody, so if you're being stalked online, like we've had people that are being stalked online by people that are in another country. They don't even know this person. It's probably unlikely that this person would ever show up at their house, but they're still able to install that same fear and cause so many problems. While they're in another country or something online, they're able to call this person's job or call the police and tell them that this person did this or that, or there's so much that they can do. It's crazy. So even though I've heard so many stories, each story is like a new story, like the audacity of what these stalkers do. So it's hard to say, like, if you do these 3 things, and there's no preventativeness of stalking. You can't like prevent it because you just don't know.
Yeah, it just seems like it's like just drawing the wrong card. Yeah. Like some kind of sick gambling game.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. And then with your true crime podcast, I mean, how many episodes of that have you done now?
21.
Okay, so you're still getting into it and everything like that, yeah.
I love it though. I love the research. I can just research, like give me a topic, I'll just research. I love reading and researching, and that's what so much of my new podcast is, I feel more, it's for the first podcast, other people are telling their stories. It's not my story.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this one, I think there's a lot more of me in it.
Yeah, because the victims of the stalking are telling their stories, and you're listening and kind of asking questions and working through it for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then this true crime podcast, this is like your curiosity driving the investigative. You're basically an investigative reporter, and you get to play that role and share it with anyone who's listening.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I've talked to family members of the victims and stuff, and they're always so like thankful for any awareness because, like I said, somebody always knows something. You did not fall off the face of the earth. So there's got to be somebody out there. Hopefully at some point they have it in their hearts to be like, oh, I did this terrible thing, and here's where their body is, or whatever.
And so how do you? I mean, yeah. So what's the method of you for your true crime podcast to pick a location and then start researching? Like, has anything like fucked up happened here in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I just pick at random. I'm always kind of studying different locations because I travel a lot. So I'm like, which country should I go to next? And a country will pop up in my head, and I'll look and see who has gone missing or gotten murdered there. Kind of how it happened.
I have maps all over my house for that exact same reason, because I'm like, I wonder if I should go filming there. Like, I wonder if there's a mountain I can climb or something. But I'm not looking for people who have gone missing or died, and then I'm not trying to put the pieces together to find out what happened to them.
But it's still similar. Like I have maps all over my house too, and I stare at them all day. When I'm working, I stare at them.
So what do you think? What do you think the most? I mean, I guess you're only 20 podcasts in. This might not be a fair question to ask, but like, what's a dangerous country to go traveling in? I mean, is the U.S. the most dangerous place to go traveling in for things to happen to you?
100%.
There you go. That's what.
Yeah. Like the only country that I'm scared to be in is the United States.
That's amazing for someone who's done as much research on these topics as you have. Yeah.
I mean, different countries with like political instability or, countries that are currently at war. Obviously, it's a little bit different. But overall, as far as like random acts of violence between other people that you will come across.
I mean, have you found any people who are like So one thing I've read a little bit about, and I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, but like war tourism, where people will go to like Syria because they want to see how fucked up Syria is, right? And then they get killed while they're in Syria on vacation, but actually it's a war zone and you shouldn't be in Syria. Like, do you ever come across shit like that?
No, I haven't yet. You know, I wouldn't go to Syria and see the war. So it's
Smart.
not right. So in that realm, it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't interest me, but it's not something that I'm going to be interested in going to right now.
Sure, yeah.
So I pick places that I would be interested in going.
Yeah, like Greece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greece.
I mean, how many people have fallen off a yacht in Greece and disappeared?
Quite a few.
Yeah. And so of your 20 episodes, 22 episodes so far of your true crime podcast, you want to walk me through one of your favorite and how you kind of came at that location and maybe what the story might have been, and then we can obviously link to all these podcasts when this comes out.
Well, I already mentioned the one about David Snedden, who was in China.
Yeah, Tiger Leaping Gorge is beautiful. It's in Yunnan province near Lijiang, and I've been there. I've been hiking through there. It's it is Northern California. It's the Rocky Mountains, basically, of China. It's really, really, really pretty. Yeah.
I want to go so bad. I've been through China a couple times, but I haven't been there. One that is coming out soon, next week or the week after, is this woman, Carla. She was actually going blind, and so she wanted to travel the world. She was in Peru for a wedding and then went to Machu Picchu by herself. She went with somebody, but then went off, to see Machu Picchu by herself. And that was fine. And then she went to the Sacred Valley, and disappeared.
Wow. I've been to Peru. I've been to Machu Picchu. Yeah, we filmed there. Yeah.
So she disappeared in...
I don't know that place yet.
It's right outside the Sacred Valley. And so... But what I found interesting was more about her, because I do like to talk a lot about the people themselves because they need a voice. A lot of times, even with like any murders, when they find the murderer, like I can name 20 murderers, but I probably can't name 20 of their victims. So I want to really give the victims a voice. But she was pretty much legally blind at that time, still able to go to a whole nother country and get around by herself. And she was smart. She spoke several languages. And, I just found it so fascinating that she was able to do all of that with almost no sight left at all.
That is incredible. And to go to Machu Picchu, which is very visually beautiful, but also it's a very tricky place to navigate with steps and stairs and stones and bricks all over the place. Like, it would be hard to be there if you didn't have like full sight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason that she went missing had nothing to do with her sight, because people go missing all the time. So I found that one really interesting, where she was challenged, but it didn't have anything to do necessarily with why she's...
Do you think maybe in a situation like that people were following her and watching her and figured out that she had some limitations and maybe would be an easy target?
I do. I think that that's definitely a possibility there.
Yeah.
I think that's what her family has decided happened as well. And I know they've worked endlessly. Her father ended up moving to Peru for, I think, 7 or 8 months. He had to leave due to COVID, but searching for her day and night. And yeah, I agree with her family that something sinister happened.
Yeah.
That she didn't just like fall down because she couldn't see.
And was there even like a ransom or a note or anything that was left, or she just disappeared off the face of the earth?
She just disappeared off the face of the earth.
That's creepy, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And, I think so often, depending on where you are, obviously if you're hiking in an area where it would be easy for your body not to be found, then okay, I can see where, maybe altitude sickness took over, you felt lots of reasons.
What wild animals as well? Like, obviously, like...
Usually wild animals will leave something, though. They'll leave some sort of trace of you. If there's zero trace of you, then it's usually human.
Yeah, and the worst kind. That's that. Do you ever feel like your days are a little morbid?
No, I really see the good in it.
Mm-hmm.
I do. like I said, I tried to talk a lot about the victims and share who they were, whatever type of person that they were, what they liked, who they were in love with, or, just something really cool about their lives that, they might be gone, but at least there's something amazing out there that can be said about them, I guess. So I do try to look at the good side of things. On a personal level, it does kind of make me, I have to work hard not to fear life and people, but I do, and make
I think it's I think I think really the stalking podcast is incredibly interesting because you're acknowledging the dangerous situation that it is, and you're giving victims a place to speak freely and openly about the trauma that's occurred to them. And I think that is really lovely. Like, that's pretty interesting, like from the outside looking in. And then your true crime podcast, I almost feel like you're doing like a really nice job of like honoring that person's life in some way by digging deeper than maybe most people had, or going further than the newspaper story, one paragraph about, someone gone missing in Peru or something, and taking it a little deeper. And do you ever like have the family members on like live, or do you ever like call in and have people talking like that? Like, what's an average length of one of these?
Anywhere between a half hour and an hour. There are times more recently, now that I've kind of got the format and everything down, I have been reaching out to family members to see if they want to be on the show. Some people don't want that. They like the show. They want, they're cool with me doing it, but they don't want to be on it for any reason. Um, and so, yeah, I think that's going to be happening sooner than later, where I'll probably once in a while at least have family members on, just so that you can really get an idea of who they're missing.
Yeah, I think that because without speaking maybe to someone who actually misses them,
Yeah.
the death almost seems abstract, right? You're just experiencing facts, and they were there on this day, and then they weren't there on that day, and this kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, and hopefully with that emotional element too, if somebody listening does know something, which ultimately would be the best scenario, right? Somebody hears them and realizes like, hey, I've caused this pain. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to at least anonymously like tell them what happened or where the body is. Most people just want closure.
Has anything like that happened where a listener like wrote in and said, hey, I know something about this situation?
Not on my new podcast, although it's interesting. Back to the stalking podcast, we never say the stalker's name unless they are dead or in prison for many, many, many years. And even though we might have someone that's anonymous on the show, we don't say the stalker's name. We don't give out identifying information because we're being stalked. We will still get their stalker that will like comment on our Instagram. Oh, they're talking about me.
Oh,
I'm going to
up.
sue you. They're talking about me. And I'm like, or said your name or any identifying information. And even the victim has no name or identifying information. So you just told.
But don't you feel like that makes you a target too? I'd be terrified, like, because you're outing, without using people's names, you're outing stalkers.
Yeah. Some reach out and, try to scare us or whatever. And we just full on ignore them and nothing has happened. I mean, we give zero acknowledgement. We don't even, sometimes we'll block them, but sometimes we don't even block them because we don't want to give them even that much.
Yeah, because once you block them, that can aggravate people and escalate things even further, right?
Yeah, it can. I mean, it's like fire. Like fire needs oxygen, right? If it has no oxygen, it'll go out.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So are you up to anything else other than casting and running these two amazing podcasts that are obviously helping a lot of people? It's very inspiring.
I have a huge list
of things you're doing.
I do, like, of things I want to do, and some of them are like big, and some of them are like little, and I just try to cross them off all the time. I mean, like, it's hundreds of weird things. Like, I really wanted to do a pie eating contest, so I did. No, I lost, but I did do the pie eating contest. So I just have like this list of random things.
That is very random. Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote a children's book.
Okay, well
It's
that's
sad though. It's not really for children. Children should probably not read it.
that's a qualifier. Yeah.
It wasn't very good. I just wanted to see if I could do it. And I did, and I published it. I think my hairdresser was maybe one of the few people that bought it because I saw it when last time I got my hair done, which is interesting. But I appreciate that. I am trying to get a documentary in the works. We'll see. And I'd like to swim with sharks soon.
Right, that's on the list. Yeah.
On the list. Yeah, I just have like a bunch of weird things. I try and do like new things all the time, every day.
That's great. Yeah. The big thing for me on my list right at the moment is I really want to get my pilot's license. Yeah. I've been wanting to fly for a long time, and I got kind of sidetracked during COVID because I was going to do it in 2020, and then life happened and things have happened. So now I want to kind of get back on track with that. And the U.S. is a great place to get your pilot's license. Yeah.
Do it right away. Don't wait.
I'm working on it. Yeah. Yeah. But because I'm not an American citizen, there are some things I need to do because of what happened a few years ago in 2001, where you have to do it. So if you're not an American passport holder, doesn't even matter if you're a green card holder. If you're not a U.S. passport holder, you have to do some kind of like FBI clearance, and that's timely and costly. So it's just another barrier. But I'm working through it now because I haven't done anything too crazy in my life, so I should be able to learn how to fly.
Okay. No, I noticed you didn't have a criminal record.
I did get arrested once in China in 2001 for walking onto a military base.
Oh yeah.
No, so I was in the mountains, and I was hiking through the mountains with a German guy. Surprisingly, we're both like, yeah, let's. There was funny. There was this bend in the road, and you could get off at one side and get back on the next bus the next day on the other side. And we're like, yeah, we should hike over the mountains. And it took 2 days. We thought it would take one. We didn't bring enough food. And by the time we got to the other side of the road, we realized that we had come down right on a military base, and then they detained us for 3 days.
Yeah. You're lucky.
It's okay. It wasn't like a diplomatic incident. They just they took 2 days to find an English translator because I wasn't. Yeah. And then once they heard our story, they're just like, okay, when the bus comes tomorrow, just get on and never come back. And we're like, yeah, we're never coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found like authorities in most countries, if you do enough research to kind of find out how police and government works wherever you're at, like you can get out of most situations.
Mm-hmm. You can talk your way out of
it. Or pay, Yeah,
there's a
country.
Yeah, I mean, one of the funny things about this story was the night before they released us, they fined us for walking onto the military base, but we never got like a receipt or anything. So we figured that the fine went into our feast on the last night, which was horse meat, which is a delicacy out in the Kazakh part of China, which is on the border with Kazakhstan, and beer and everything like that. So we basically funded our final feast.
It's an experience, right?
Absolutely. So look, we're not even halfway through 2024. What do you have coming up, or what do you have that you're excited about for this kind of next half of the year?
Well, later this month, next month, I actually I did a TV show.
Oh,
that I'm on.
That's exciting, isn't it? Did you cast yourself?
I did not. It's called Patty Stanger, the Matchmaker. It's a dating show. And it was on my list, on my random list of things, like with the pie eating contest. I was like, well, I've cast reality shows for all these years, but I've never been on one. So I kind of want to see the other side.
So you got yourself onto one of these dating reality shows?
I did. Yeah.
And how long ago was that?
We filmed it a few months ago, and it comes out. My episode is May 23rd.
And what was that? What was that experience like?
I probably wouldn't do it again.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be on reality.
Yeah. Did they twist and turn everything around and make things upside down just to, create fake drama and everything? All these kind of stereotypes that you would think that exist in the reality TV space?
Not so much, because it wasn't, luckily, like it wasn't that type of show. It wasn't like Love Island.
That's okay. Noted.
Right. It's not. It wasn't really that type of show, and I don't drink, so that's kind of, I felt pretty confident with like how I can hold myself. Like I feel like a lot of times things get out of control in those shows when people start drinking.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't drink, and it was just going on a date, and some, ideas that Patty had about how to change my life to make myself, I guess, appear more attractive to men. I'm trying to pick my words correctly.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely felt like I was attractive enough to men before that, but we'll see. We'll see how the edit goes. It wasn't bad. Like, I didn't have a terrible time, but now that I've done it, I think I'm good on reality TV for myself.
Just check it off the list and move to the next one. Yeah.
That's really what I've been doing. Is like I'll look on my list every day, like, what can I do today? Maybe a little thing, maybe a bigger thing.
Well, it's great that you have a list and you're just kind of like living life through these experiences that you are seeking out, right? I mean, so many people just kind of drift through life, but you seem to have like some kind of like a rough plan of what you want to do and how.
I just want to make it as exciting as possible.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants to do that, but they don't have the discipline to write things down and turn them into reality, right?
Well, I was in a bad relationship, violent relationship for many years, for 7 years with my ex. And so I feel like during that time, I missed out on so much life because I was just living in constant fear and just, walking on eggshells and, just not being able to live my life to the fullest. So when that ended, I don't know, like I just went through this, like, I'm going to do everything that's ever popped in my head.
That's a great reaction to a terrible situation, I think. Like, it's almost like a rebirth.
Yeah, I started a bikini company. That was always that was like a big one on my list of things I always wanted.
Okay.
So I did that.
What's the bikini company called?
It's called the Boyfriend Bikini.
Mm-hmm.
And so I named each one after a man after a type of man that's been in my life. So like some kind of good, some kind of bad, whatever. But that I've learned from. And then part of the proceeds goes to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
Well, that's very thoughtful, very forward thinking.
Well, it was like my, I don't want to use the word revenge, but it was like, what can I do to like combat this thing I went through? So that was, I guess, all I could come up with. I don't know.
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, you turned your terrible, life-threatening experience into a business opportunity.
That's what I tell people to do, actually. I feel like if you go through trauma, like, how can you like compartmentalize that and make it into something else? Like if it just sits there and you don't make it go into something else, like it's not going to just go away. So you have to like reformulate it somehow. So that's like.
And I always think the best revenge is making money.
Sure is.
That's good.
I fully agree with that.
Yeah. If you can monetize a bad experience and come out of it on the other end with, with a mortgage paid off or something, and just put yourself a little ahead of the game from where you were. I think that's very powerful.
Totally agree with that. 100%.
So you have the Bikini Line. You've got the 2 podcasts. What else are you working on?
My children's book. It is still available on Amazon, but children should not read it.
Okay, so we won't mention it?
Yeah. No, we can. No, it was written by me and my dog, and it's called The Great Daddy Hunt.
The Great Daddy Hunt, okay.
Yeah, so it's about, because when I first got my dog, we were with my ex, and so, I mean, it's not a true story by any stretch of the imagination.
That's good. I'm glad you made that caveat early.
I have to because some of the photos, but, so the bad man leaves, and it's just me and my dog, and then he feels bad because I'm lonely, so he goes and looks for a new daddy, and he finds like the raccoons, but that doesn't work, and he finds like all these different like animals and people and stuff, and none of them work because it's like, okay, on my own. But then he finds this really cute guy in a bookstore or something, and we get married, and that's it.
Complete fiction because there's no real bookstores anymore.
That's funny. I didn't think of that. I really made it like as non-attainable as possible.
Okay, and that's good. And by putting your hero at the end, finding him in a bookstore, made it a true work of fiction. Well, that's exciting. So you got the book, the Bikini Line, and 2 podcasts. So you are busy and actively crossing things off your list.
And I'm still doing casting too.
Okay.
Commercials. a lot of commercials lately, but I think I just picked up a couple small films. So we'll see. I like to stay busy.
Is there a one-stop shop like website where everyone can see everything you're doing? Like,
I guess Instagram. I post a lot on Instagram.
okay, so maybe so when this goes live, I'll direct everyone to your Instagram or something like that.
I mean, I post pretty much. I mean, Instagram is not real life.
No, that's for sure. Yeah.
Just to put that out there. I do not post my bad days. I'm that person that's like, woo, life is great. Although I do feel most of I love waking up. I think like waking up is the best thing in the world. Because you have like a whole new day. So
You do, but you don't want to take a selfie like when you wake up every morning because you look like I don't know. At least I look pretty rough in the morning. Like,
look
oh,
amazing.
okay,
I'm just kidding.
that's good.
No, but I do try to just like post like more like happy things or happy things that I'm doing, but always what I'm doing. And I travel a lot, so I post a lot of travel stuff.
That's great. Well, look, thank you so much for swinging by and sharing all of that with me. I know you have an event to get to in a little while, but inspiring, amazing. Like, congratulations on all of your successes with the podcast as well. I mean, just staying with that for 222 episodes and then launching a second one and, keeping busy on your other ventures. It's very inspirational. I really wish you the best of luck on all your everything.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
No worries. Now we can switch to this one and we can shake hands because we're really having a podcast in real life, not virtually. Thank you very much for swinging by today.
Of course. Thanks so much.
We fade to black and we're done.